Yeah, more and more scriptures that we once thought, because we didn't know too much, 100, 200 years ago, we didn't know too much, but not to be arrogant now, but we know more than we know 200 years ago. Well, some would argue the opposite, but we're beginning to find out many of the things in the Bible that were once thought to be some type of metaphor, analogy, or something like that, was in fact a simple statement of truth. For example, the trumpet blasts, right?
Yeah.
Part of the data for the trumpet blast is also in a series of charts, but there's something that has been observed. Now, you can only observe sound through atmosphere that we would hear with our ears. Well, something happened to Mars, and it has enough atmosphere to detect sound. And something of a trumpet blast was heard by the passage of something, a very small one. With that scenario and simulations on a larger scale, the writings would seem to be true. There are documented writings of just about every civilization that said that people heard a trumpet blast that pierced their bones. It was loud. It made people's ears bleed. It was overwhelming and continuous.
What Mike said is very similar to theories that I've had. So I was thinking when he was talking about this, how he talked about as this object passed Mars, there was a trumpet sound because of the atmosphere. Now that makes a lot of sense, based on a science standpoint of things. But I want to say this, with I guess you could call it, we call it kind of a binary system. You can call it Nibiru system or Nemesis system. Remember Nemesis and Nibiru, it's all in the same system. But as this thing passes, or it gets close to us and passes, there's 7 planets. Now it has moons also, but 7 planets. So I got to thinking, as this passes by and like the atmosphere, and if it causes that sound as it passes by, there is 7 planets in the system. This binary system has 7 planets. In the Bible, there are 7 trumpets. So I kind of thought about that as being maybe the 7 trumpets that are sounded as it goes by. Each one, causes a louder or a different type, or however this works, causes this sound. And so maybe the 7 planets of the system causes the 7 trumpets. And there's just more and more, as it gets closer, there's more and more things that unfold with each trumpet. That would make sense. I really, really do believe, I've always believed this, and I still do, and I always will, that they did not know how to explain things, so they did it best they could with what knowledge they had then. Now that we have better science and understanding of things, it makes 100 times more sense. So what sounds like, many years ago would sound like, oh, that couldn't happen, that makes no sense. Now we're finding, oh, that can happen, that makes perfect sense. So there's a lot of things in the Bible that I think they didn't know what they were seeing, so they explained it with things they had the best way they could. But we are starting to see all that unfold. Now, even if you are just scientific and you're not a Christian, you can still look at this and see all this unfolding. Even if you look at this as a history book or prophecy, like historic prophecy, anything like that, then you can still see all this unfolding. Now, I'm a Christian personally, but I am very scientific also, and that's why I kind of match everything. I kind of read the Bible and read, study, and kind of match it with things that could be scientific. Like, even Mike, he's the same way. He's talked about the heavens parting back like a scroll. He said that would happen with the system passing. I guess also it talks about the pole shift. They talked about it different, in a different way, but it talks about, all the islands and the mountains being moved out of their place, and the tilt wobble that we're having right now with the earth. It talks about that, moves to and fro like a drunkard, shakes, everything's moved, and then the stars fall from heaven as it, turns. When the earth shifts and is moved, that is exactly how the sky will look. Stars will appear to fall into the horizon, and in fact, the pole shift will cause the Earth to alter its rotation. We've talked about that with Mike. He's talked about that many times, and I kind of just wanted to go over all this. Just remember, that theory is really a good theory with the trumpets. How when the system passes, it causes the trumpet sounds because of the atmosphere as these things pass.